Hello, everybody. Welcome to Astro-Tarot Forecast. I am here with Susheela Kundargi, and we're ready to talk about October. October brings its own energy. It's eclipse season. We're in the middle of it. Planets are starting to go direct. Energy's gonna, the pace of energy I can see start to speed up.
Yeah.
I feel that this is like checks and balances kind of energy. I don't know.
Big time. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
we were just sort of recapping to ourselves, but if you remember our September forecast, we were talking about, if you didn't do the work, if you didn't do all the work, if you were lying to yourself or whatever, certain things were going to get exposed. This feeling of disillusionment, which is a good thing, to remove
right,
the illusions, to remove the veils so that things show up. We want truth, we're seeking truth, we want resolution,
right,
but it means when we get it, we have to be ready to face it. And
right.
it's been a doozy. It's
Yeah,
been the universe poking at the old wounds. It's been a universe saying, hey, yeah, you wanted this thing. Well, here it is. And many people were like, I don't know how to deal with that. So,
yeah,
yeah, the brakes are coming off. And I think, hopefully everybody's gone through the worst of it and we're ready to, like, whew, pick it up and go.
absolutely. I just observed, because the themes spread, it's different story, same theme. Um, the amount of just of clarity that has come. This
Yeah.
Mercury retrograde, that Mercury retrograde of September,
It
go ahead.
it feels like it was going, I think because we had so many planets in retrograde
Yeah,
that I honestly felt like it's been 8 weeks of Mercury retrograde. Like that
yes,
shadow period, we're coming out of it right now, but that pre-shadow period seemed to really, things were happening for people and everybody's kind of going, why are things going sideways? But I think it was the compounded energy of
mm-hmm,
everything else
mm-hmm,
going.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been a doozy, and I think everybody is really looking forward to everything moving forward. I got a text the other day, and they're probably listening to this forecast, but it was like, why do we have so many Mercury retrogrades, and why was this longer than all the others?
That's funny. I like that because it means they're paying attention. It means that they're present, whether they want to be or not.
Yeah, exactly. Uh,
Yeah, that goes to show you a lot. I absolutely agree. I think I may have mentioned in last month's forecast that, or I don't remember. This is the third Mercury retrograde that we have in the sign of Libra.
mhm.
And so this one happened to coincide with, all of the other planets, like you said, retrograde as well. And I think that this sense of balance and what's fair, and especially in relationships, how do I show up? What are the tendencies? What is my responsibility? How do I let someone else know what I would like to see? And just that amount of clarity that I think came to each and every one of us individually is, I think it asks us to grow up.
Mhm, mhm.
It asks us to grow up in a way that feels solid. And that's what I like,
Yeah,
because Mercury retrograded back into Virgo.
yeah,
And so we're recording this October 2nd. So today, Mercury comes out of its retrograde. And as it comes out of its retrograde, it's creating a powerful trine to Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. And Pluto's going to move direct later this month in October. So those two earth signs, and Pluto representing the transformation and personal empowerment that comes from that transformation, I feel it's a different feeling. I feel it is a much more grown up feeling, in the sense of, this is my responsibility. Like, the decisions that I make, that with that much clarity, really determine where my life goes and how I relate and what I tolerate and what I don't. And that may seem like a very obvious thing to say, but it's something that I feel the sense of personal responsibility. I feel it's something we've been building up to for
Hmm.
some time in a really different way. Every time I feel it just gets clearer and clearer and clearer.
Well, and with Pluto, and you're in the US, I'm in Canada, but we're really impacted by what happens in the US. I mean, it's a global
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Doing its Pluto return,
Hmm.
we're seeing that, like, collectively, we're seeing all these things. There's no more pretending. There's no
Hmm.
more like just putting on a pretty face to whatever the issue is,
Right.
on a very micro level, personal within ourselves, the BS that we tell ourselves.
Hmm.
We can't even buy it anymore,
Hmm.
and on a global scale, it's happening. It's like, come on already. Are we going to do something, or are we just going to, if we're not going to do something, just we're getting swallowed up in it. So it's all of those things. Like, if you really want it, then you're going to really have to do it. And the
Yeah.
universe is there to back you up if you do it. But it's all the pretense is gone.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that, because I think it's important to remember that Pluto is a transpersonal planet, not a personal planet. So it's not a planet that we use necessarily in our personality on a daily basis, if you will. So what we've seen happen with Pluto, Pluto is the planet of destruction and transformation in Capricorn, Capricorn that represents systems. Political systems, financial systems. It represents a status quo. It represents people in power in terms of a hierarchy. And, you know, I, I'm trying to be mindful of any keywords that we use here so we're not censored in any
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
But I invite you all to look back at all of the world events that have taken place
Yeah.
in September, and understand that this Mercury retrograde at a global scale is saying, wait a minute, let's look at what's really happening so that you get a greater sense of personal responsibility. So it matters. It's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Shall we
yeah,
dive in?
let's dive in. So we begin with October 1st. So October 1st, we had Venus and Libra create an opposition to Jupiter in Aries. And this is interesting because this is an aspect that is active for several days after October 1st. And I invite you to look at how this unfolds that this very first week of October, because this opposition between Libra and Aries was very active during the Mercury retrograde that we had for most of September. This is the Libra Aries axis of the zodiac, is the axis of relationships. Venus is now in its home sign of Libra. Venus in Libra wants to find a common ground, wants to find a middle ground. Its opposition to Jupiter in Aries, it wants to find a common ground, obviously for both individuals, but Jupiter is the planet of expansion and Aries is the sign of the individual, the sign of the I. So how does each individual expanding on their own, again, taking self-responsibility for their own side, and how does that then affect the coming together of the Venus and Libra? That's ideally the way that we want to approach this. I've seen it in my own relationship. We've had some pretty interesting conversations of how we're going to move forward, bigger plans. What do we want to do? What does that require of each of us so that we can then come together and in the long run create this next phase of our lives that we see coming?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say that this conversation is had and someone in the relationship is not ready. The way that this can manifest is a lot of defensiveness. Well, what are you saying? That I'm not good enough, that I'm not ready, that I'm not this? That's Jupiter retrograde in Aries, this inflation of the ego that is hiding fear. And Venus in Libra genuinely wanting to come in and find a middle ground, and someone not being there for their own reasons. And the ability to say, okay, this is where I am. If that's where you're at, I respect that. But this clearly is not going to come together. And I say this because eclipse season is very much all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see what came up for that.
Well, I'm using the Muse Tarot, which is all the characters, all the people in it are female characters, first of all. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the card that I got for this is the Page of Materials, so the Page of Pentacles, in other words. And it's kind of fitting because that is really the thing that goes wrong when we have Mercury retrograde.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about paperwork and practical matters and all the glitchy stuff and communications. Then it's essentially all the ways that we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And even, going into our traveling, like we're exchanging one thing for another. We're getting from A to B. We're speaking something to describe how we feel so somebody else can understand it, or this is what I need. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's we're still in that. It's really a card of communication, of learning, and it's a solid card in its best, in its highest aspect. It's a very positive card of like, yes, things are flowing, things are being communicated, this is progress, this is steady, it's information exchange, documents, all those things that you've been waiting to do. We're now in that process of embarking on them, but it's still very cautious. So we're still under that influence of all this sort of glitchy stuff. And so don't jump the gun and think, oh, okay, everything's good. Like, going direct, like I can just, go and do and sign and whatever. No, it's still there. It's being very deliberate
Mm-hmm.
in all of those things because there's a very practical aspect to this and practical ramifications should something go awry.
Yeah. I think it's important. I like that you use that word because it's important to remember that while Venus in Libra sounds lovely, and it's lovely energy, someone who has a natal Venus in Libra can tend to carry themselves, for instance, very elegantly, very eloquently, very effortlessly, find a really beautiful way of of having some really difficult conversations. But Venus in Libra is practical. And what's interesting is that Libra is actually a masculine sign and Venus there. So it's interesting energy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and practicality really comes in hand, which I love that because it takes us to the aspect of October 2nd and 3rd, depending on where you live. And this is Mercury going direct in Virgo, creating a trine to Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. So the last time that Mercury was in Virgo, within this realm of degrees, you want to think all the way back to like the week of August 20th, that last week of August, those 2 weeks that took us right into that Mercury retrograde in September, because that's how far back this goes. And it isn't that far back, but considering how this Mercury retrograde felt, it is that far back. At that time, Mercury retrograde in Virgo was creating a connection to that same Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. Mercury went back, Virgo went into Libra, said, not so much, and then went back, and now it's back in Virgo. I invite you to think about what conversations you were having, what thoughts you were having. This is when, those of you who journal, this is when your journals really come in handy. You get to go back and see where you were then, especially mentally. What were your plans? What were your ideas? What were you trying to set in motion that maybe just slowed down or you weren't feeling it? Because Virgo and Capricorn are earth signs. They're practical signs. They're saying in Virgo energy, one step at a time, one step at a time. And Capricorn reminds us this is a marathon, not a sprint. So I really like this. I really like this because I don't think we're lacking clarity. I don't think we're lacking clarity. And if you feel you are, I invite you to ask yourself if you might be in denial. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have the perfect card for looking back at the past, which is the Six of Cups here. In this deck, it's the Six of Emotions. She's she does have an expression that's just like a little bit, it almost looks a little sad,
I can see that.
but it's sort of holding on to this thing from the past. And there is this need to let stuff go. Like, as we've asked for all these things, we're moving forward. We've felt the weight of all these planets retrograde. They're moving forward. Like, can you hop on it and stop looking back now, other than to go, oh yeah, I remember that. I don't want that anymore, and keep going. And sometimes there's a feeling of sorrow connected to just things that you're used to, and then you have to let them go. And I'm feeling that collectively, I think we're really ready for the most part, that like those nostalgic feelings for things that were subpar are kind of not there so much anymore, because it was painful.
I love that subpar term. And here's another way that it can manifest itself. And I'll share something personal real quickly. What I've noticed is that with being really intentional with this energy, that I think again has hit us really poignantly, each one of us in the way that it's needed to, is that I'm coming out of this Mercury retrograde with a realization that that worry and anxiety that used to really take over me a lot tries to come up, and I'm like, it doesn't feel the same anymore.
No.
And that's subpar. And the reason for that is that I'm like, I just think to myself, I'm guided, I'm supported. And if I show up and if I do what I say I'm going to do, that carries weight, that carries momentum. And this anxiety and this fear of uncertainty is not going to take over anymore. So it does feel smaller. Those things do feel smaller. And I think it's because the reason that this energy has felt so heavy and again so poignant to each and every one of us is because we're being elevated. We're being elevated to this state of consciousness that says, you are so powerful. And again, if you need a collective example, look at how people are fighting back.
Yeah.
Look at how people are fighting back. This is when things like social media, this is when we see a greater purpose to them. That those things that were hidden away from us, we get to see the rise of people, we get to see the rise of women, because we're coming back to that power. We're not afraid of something outside of us that's greater than us, and we're not allowing those small voices that keep us small in our heads also take over. It's presence. It's bringing us to presence a lot. And I'm finding even in my clients, they're finding ways to come back to presence a lot faster.
Yeah, and even, that higher level that you speak about, we've been experiencing that in my tarot class too, of we've been through all the cards already. There's 78 of them in a deck. And as we get through this next phase, there's a higher meaning to every single card. Even the most mundane lower arcana, minor arcana card, there's this higher level, because exactly that. Now that we know what we know, that other stuff is just kind of like, no, I can't go back that way. I need to go this way, because what the heck did we come here for?
Yeah.
Other than to dive into the chaos so that we could do something about it, to transform it.
Absolutely.
That's become apparent now for a great many people.
Yeah, absolutely. On October 3rd, I threw in this aspect because I think it's important I tried to leave moon aspects out. Otherwise we'd have, like a 5-hour episode. But I threw a few in here because the moon represents our emotional processing, but also those psychic undercurrents that determine a lot of our actions if we're not aware. So on October 3rd, we're going to have the moon in Capricorn conjunct that Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, and creating a trine to Uranus retrograde in Taurus. The reason that I wanted to put this on here is that that starts off a week. It's a Monday, and it's right when Mercury's going direct. That's a lot of Earth energy activated.
Mm-hmm.
It's the moon involved, Mercury involved, Capricorn, Pluto, and Uranus. So we have two personal planets, or we have the luminary, the moon. We have Mercury, a personal planet. These are two personal aspects. And then transpersonal, which is Pluto and Uranus. This is a beautiful combination of Earth energy that, again, brings in that practical factor. Like, don't ignore what you know you see. You know this. If you see a pattern,
Mm-hmm.
your mind sees it, your heart knows it, and you can't escape it.
Yeah.
Don't ignore that. Don't ignore that. And if you don't ignore that and you follow that path that you now know you need to follow, that path that honors your truth, that path of self-respect, that path of, this is the kind of relationship that I hope for instance, and I'm tempted to go for that relationship that I've always gone for, but I knew that if I come back to myself and open myself up to what I now know I'm worth, it's going to come. Like that amount of practicality and groundedness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
October really starts off with a bang.
I'm sitting here holding this card while you're talking, and I'm looking at the imagery, and it's
Right.
very much it's the Five of Swords, but it's in this deck. Swords are voices, and it's the element of air, which Libra is an air sign, and
Mhm.
it's this sort of you know it's a minor card. It's not this major kind of thing, but it's that undercurrent that's there of like, well, what are we telling ourselves?
Mhm.
What are we telling ourselves that's actually harming ourselves? Like these, this little, you talk about patterns and things like that. It's like the little voice inside us that continues the pattern, where
Mhm.
we're ruminating, or where we're being drawn back into the past, or where we feelings of self-doubt, or all that kind of stuff. And it's minor, but it's major in a way, because now that all the other stuff is falling away, which is
Mhm.
great, that can come back up again, and you have that opportunity to look at it and go, I know you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Do I want to go that way again? No, I don't.
Right. So I love that because, so I talked, that's October 3rd. That's at the beginning of the week. That's on a Monday. We skip on to October 7th, which is the end of the week. It's a Friday. And on that Friday, we have a moon in Pisces square Mars in Gemini. So we have the moon in a water sign, which is lovely and beautiful. It gives great creative energy, really great day to meet with your therapist or your facilitator, to, because I can see this being a lot of energy, kind of like, well, again, do I choose this or do I choose that? Do I, almost like not wanting to choose or being afraid to choose what you know is best. You're still there's still this sense of like kind of playing, right? Like, and you're only playing yourself. The square to Mars in Gemini, it's just all of the ideas, all of the thoughts, all of the options. And so again, I put in these two lunar transits because although they're short, they're the first week of October. And how we set the intention for the first week of October really matters. Again, because we're in the middle of eclipse season. So understand that there is going to be this kind of back and forth. I'm not sure. You do know, you are sure. Come back to it. Come back to that sense of peace in your body and let that be what helps you make a decision.
Mm-hmm. So the equivalent of the Ten of Wands is the Ten of Inspiration in this deck. And, nines are completion. as far as numerology goes. And
Hmm.
we get to 10, which is the thing that happens just before we reset back to a 0 or a 1.
Hmm.
And there we are carrying around this heavy, heavy, heavy burden, but it's time to put it down.
Hmm.
Find a way, in this case, it's like putting everything down and carrying one forward, picking up one and carrying it forward, picking up one and carrying it forward. But that weight, that burden that we've been carrying has been self-imposed.
Mm.
It's self-imposed, and then it's been just increased by all these internal and external factors. Like everything's been compounded, really. So the 10 is that, yeah, it's a huge burden and a huge, often mental strain. It can affect your creativity and your impulses and questioning your reasoning, your reason for being, even. So it's like, put it down. Whatever those heavy thoughts are, like, even visualize physically putting them down and stepping away and looking at it from a different perspective, or leaving it there altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, that makes a lot of sense because I think that with Mars and Gemini, um, especially being activated, we do need to take a step back. Um, the following day, October 8th, we have Pluto waking up, finally going direct at 26 degrees Capricorn. Pluto has been retrograde since April 29th of this year. And Pluto went retrograde our last eclipse season and is waking up in this eclipse season. Okay. The cosmos don't lie. The cosmos tie things together. So think about how Pluto, the planet of transformation, going retrograde during our last eclipse season, which was April and May of earlier this year, 2022. Think about your summer. Think about what kind of summer you had, right? All of Pluto retrograde then. Here we come to this next eclipse season that takes place October, November of 2022. Pluto wakes up as, again, all of the other planets are starting to wake up as well. I invite you to really think about how you have transformed, because in some way, shape, or form, we all have.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious. Oh, wow.
It's the Eight of Swords, or the Eight of Voices in this deck. And these, again, are those self-imposed limitations. But this card really feels to me like liberation from that. It's, looking up, there's this blindfold, there's light coming in, there's light coming in from all these, is the glass half empty or half full? It definitely feels like it's filling, the light is coming through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole wall doesn't have to be knocked down, but at least you see that there is light coming through. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what this feels like. It's like, what we were holding on to, what was all of this? Like, here it is, like, oh, there's a little glimmer of light, and it's perspective as well. There's a lot of things that we probably took for granted in that time, like
Yes.
when everything is just, when you're able to pretend and keep the veil up, and out there everybody's doing the same thing, it's pretty easy to kind of float through. But then when you ask for all this stuff, then you're like, oh, there's limitations. Those limitations aren't real either. And then it's like, oh, the light's on. Yeah, the whole sky doesn't need to be illuminated to get it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
A night light pretty much goes, oh, there is light. Yeah, I got it.
That takes me back to what you said earlier, those subpar thoughts. If there is something that you don't want to take for granted, I mean, ever, right? But I think as of this month and on, and I say this again in a very grounded, realistic way, don't take your internal power and magic for granted.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's not so much about having to work that much harder. It's about really getting straight within yourself and aligning with what you know matters to you. Capricorn energy still active, some Virgo energy still active, Taurus energy still active. Work still has to be put. We still have to show up. We still have to do the things we want to do. But there is something that happens when we tune into that power, that really big thing, that really big goal, that really big aspiration, that hope for that better relationship. It doesn't feel so unattainable.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that this Pluto going direct right now is that it is the awakening of that, hopefully. Because look, we have to remember that Pluto is going to dip its toes into Aquarius next year. So Pluto is doing its last bits and pieces this year and for a few more months in Capricorn. So as it's doing that, the universe is making sure that we hone in on that personal empowerment, and that's what it's really represented. So what I love about this is that the next day on October 9th, we have the full moon in Aries. So the full moon in Aries, like any other full moon, closes up a 6-month energetic window that started with the new moon in Aries 6 months prior. So this was back in April. That interestingly enough started or opened up the energetic window of that eclipse season. Again, now we're touching in on last eclipse season and this eclipse season. So this particular full moon in Aries, it'll be at 16 degrees Aries. It's going to have Venus and the sun together. Pluto's going to be direct. It creates a favorable aspect to Saturn. This to me feels like go time. This to me is like, let's unleash that warrior within, but not that warrior that has to make a lot of fuss. Aries to me is that energy of assertion, absolutely. You don't always have to create a war to create assertion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Venus and Libra there is reminding us of that. And then especially with Pluto going direct is like, we can be assertive because we walk our talk.
Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty good full moon.
So this is another 8. So we've had 2 8s side
Wow.
by side.
Mm-hmm.
This is the 8 of Pentacles and the 8 of Materials. So in this deck, they're all flowers blooming, and it's very practical. Again, this is like, I think about, I've got a daughter in university. It's midterms next week. This is like, if you can apply that to your life
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, there's that panic. Oh, I have to cram. Oh, I have to, da, da, da. Will I be able to? It's like all of a sudden there's clarity. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that wasn't so hard to study. Oh, that wasn't so hard to motivate myself. Oh, I'm not actually procrastinating. I'm able to do all the stuff I normally would do, and I procrastinated a little and it didn't even show. Oh,
Right.
I did the test. That was way easier than I thought it was. It's
Mm-hmm.
that kind of energy of, you just have to put a little more effort into it with a little more organization. The energies are favorable for that. So the
Right.
universe comes along and just like sort of whooshes you along because you did that little extra bit. Even if it was only the intention part that
Mm-hmm.
was there, the
Mm-hmm.
tension has shifted from before, whether it's just I believe in myself more than I used to, or I have a better vision of what I want in the future, or even if it's not a vision, it's just a feeling or a sensation. It's like all of a sudden the wheels are in motion and everything starts moving. It's like we've tapped into. I watched a very interesting video by Greg Braden yesterday about cramming information into a water droplet. And they were able to prove that more information than they ever thought possible could be crammed into this compressed water droplet than they could put in a regular circuit board.
Wow.
And the water itself was not holding that information, but the field around was. So as a collective, when we do that intentionally with everybody's doing it, because Pluto, as you said, is a more of a macro kind of energy, we're all helping each other by doing these little things. We are actually helping the collective, and the collective is actually helping us.
Yes,
Why it's easier. It's weird. Even if you're not talking to people, you're still being helped by them and vice versa.
absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I think that the perfect example of that is also, seeing how many people are venturing out on their own with their side hustles, and, either keeping them like part-time side hustles or making them full-time hustles. Like, everyone is tapping. We've seen like people tap into their own magic. And so it's like, oh, maybe I have that too. Maybe I can do something like that too. And everyone is tapping into this simply because it started with a few people believing in themselves. And then you lead by example, whether you realize it or not.
Mhm.
Yeah. The next day, on October 10th, we have Mercury enter the sign of Libra. So I think this is important to remember because we've had this aspect. We've had Mercury in Libra twice before. We had Mercury in Libra uh, late August, very late August. Then we had Mercury in Libra right in the middle of the Mercury retrograde. It was at 0 degrees Libra. So it came together with the sun right when the sun was at 0 degrees Libra, which was the opening of the fall equinox. That's a really, really big deal. For Mercury to be retrograde and have what we call an inferior conjunction, which happens every single Mercury retrograde, where Mercury meets the sun in the middle of its retrograde, but this time it happened at 0 degrees Libra, which is the opening of a new season. Libra is a cardinal sign. It's known as a sign to begin things because it begins a season.
Mhm.
And here's Libra, Mercury and Libra now direct. This is different. This is a different outlook. This is a different sense of balance. This is a different sense of inner peace. This is a different sense of how I want to relate. Different in negotiations too, because if you've been present with it, if you've been holding the discomfort that September brought, this is about, for instance, I'm going to charge my worth.
Mhm.
I'm going to come back to myself and I'm going to negotiate. Libra is a sign of negotiation. Mercury is is the planet of communication. This is a different Mercury and Libra. Mercury and Libra can be like, oh, but this, oh, but that, like indecision. This one doesn't strike me like that.
Again, if people have been following along with us for the past year, we don't talk about what cards match until we're here. And I don't think about these. I let the deck tell me what card is for any particular day. So the card of oscillating energies is the
Wow.
Two of Swords, and it's about balance, and it's an air sign. Okay. So it is that kind of, I don't want to look at it. Let me just feel my way through it. I'm going to pick this. No, I'm going to pick that. Oh, it's going to be a little bit of this. It's a little non-committal. It's a little overthinking. It's a little not thinking enough. It's oscillation, trying to find balance, moving in and out, maybe getting too many opinions, too many in the kitchen. Yeah, I know what I should do, but I don't want to. I have one foot on this side of the timeline and one foot in that side. It's all of that kind of stuff. And so with this card, I picked this deck. I don't think we've used it in many, 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 many months.
Yeah.
So there's different imagery here, and this is really a balanced picture. It's not an imbalanced picture. So it's coming into that like, come on now, you freaking know what to do. Just do it. That's what it is. And even if it's just, again, if it's just that intention, or you actually are able to follow through right now, it doesn't really matter. It's just like something within us knows and it's like a settled feeling. It's like a comfortable feeling. It's not uneasy anymore. It's not anxious anymore. It's just like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the one. Even if you
Mhm.
sit on it for a few days or a week even,
Right.
it doesn't matter. That sensation is there.
Yeah. You know, October 10th is when Mercury enters Libra, and that's the beginning of the second week of October. So that's another Monday. So I want you to pay attention to that because, like I mentioned, October 3rd, we start with that moon in Capricorn conjunct Pluto and trine Uranus, right? That's the first week of October. We talked about what that means. This is the second week of October. Mercury enters Libra. On October 11th, which is just the next day, but this energy is still active on October 10th. We have the sun in Libra create a trine to Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. The sun represents us as individuals, our identity, our vitality, our creativity. Creating a trine, a favorable aspect to Saturn, retrograde in Aquarius. Saturn's going to go direct in just a few days. Whenever the sun and Saturn come together, this is commitment. And to me, this is self commitment. So here's yet another week where the cosmos are saying, if you commit to what you know is your truth, even if you can't see what that means in the greater scale, there's still a certain level of uncertainty, especially in the middle of eclipses.
Mm-hmm.
Rest assured, rest assured that that ease that comes with you honoring what you now know is going to guide you. But it takes commitment. And Saturn, again, it's work. How do you show up for yourself? What are your responsibilities? Saturn is the planet of responsibility. So, what are your responsibilities? What do you know? The things you know, the things you know. You honor those. You can't really be led astray.
Mm-hmm. Again, this is a really beautiful card. It's the Four of Cups, Four of Emotions, and it's always depicted as there's three cups there. There's a new cup emerging. The person is always they're just sitting there bummed out because I've got the same old cups here.
Mhm.
Same old cups. These cups are great, but they're the same old cups. Cups are the things that feed us and nurture us and provide us with love and sustenance and whatever that means to you. And then there's that other cup. And I love the way it's depicted here because it's actually these two faces, which is the same person's face. So when we
Mm.
talk about our commitment to ourself, this is ourself looking at ourself,
Yeah.
balanced, perfectly balanced, and creating that other cup in the middle. There's that giant cup that's formed in the space of the two faces. And
Mhm.
there's the person sitting there. All I've got are these three cups, and three cups is a lot of cups. Actually, it's a lot, but
Yeah.
it's that failure to see a new opportunity. And so, what it's saying is, you are the one, when you commit to yourself, you create your opportunities. Not just one opportunity, but it's a giant cup. It's the biggest potential that you could have. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes people can't envision a new opportunity. So it never happens because
Mhm.
they've never experienced something other than what their three old cups look like, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
so to get into that space, again, it comes down to intention and being balanced within yourself so that you draw to you that greater opportunity, whatever it is, even if it's just telling yourself, I am open for something better than
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
Whatever the universe wants to bring me that's better, that's good for me, I'll look at it.
Yeah.
And it's as easy as that.
Right. Right. I love that. I love that you keep bringing up the word intention in that it's not so much an intention for something specific as much as it is an intention to believe in oneself, to believe that it's all working out for the greater good. Um, and I think that that's important to keep in mind because during eclipses, this is a moment where the ego has to take a step back and allow spirit to align you with what's meant for you. Eclipses are a time that I've heard it described in this way, and I'll never forget this. Eclipses are a time of great endings and great new beginnings. So again, think back to last eclipse season, think back to last April and May. How were those months for you? There was a lot that happened for a lot of people in that time. Well, it doesn't mean that if you had a rough time that it's going to feel that rough all over again. Not at all. Especially again, if you're setting the intention to what do I know is my truth? What brings me peace? And coming back to self. And if something leaves, allowing it and trusting, believe me, because eclipses have this, they're quick. Eclipses are quick. This is a month. Susheela and I were talking about this earlier. This is a month where the universe will respond as quickly as we respond. So when we say yes to something, boom. When we say no to something, take it away, replaced by something new. And it's really this thinning of a veil between us and this something greater that is asking us to dance with it, is asking us to move with it. So that's really beautiful. I love that card. Okay, that takes us to October 12th. Mercury in Libra creates an opposition to Jupiter retrograde in Aries. So this is very, very similar to that very first day of October, which was Venus in Libra creating an opposition to Jupiter retrograde in Aries. So we have these like ping pong aspects between Libra and Aries, Libra and Aries. Look, relationships are playing a big role in how we are expressing ourselves in our lives. And it makes sense. It makes sense. This, again, this Libra energy, Aries energy, Libra energy, Aries energy, that was such a big part of that Mercury retrograde in September. And it makes a lot of sense. So Mercury and Libra, this is my side, this is your side. How do we meet halfway? The opposition to Jupiter and Aries, again, can be an inflation of the ego if someone is not grounded within their own personal empowerment. And again, the sense of defensiveness. On that same day, we have Mars in Gemini square Neptune in Pisces. This is again very similar to that October 7th Moon in Pisces squared Mars in Gemini. This wanting to communicate a lot of things, wanting to communicate where we stand, where we are, and Pisces energy being a little muddied, getting confused. That's why the intention of coming back to the self almost hopefully on a daily basis matters, because we are going to run into these aspects that kind of catches off guard or confuses a little bit, and it's up to us to come back to center.
So we have this very beautiful card, and I think in every deck, I can't think of a deck where it wouldn't be beautiful, but the sun is one of the, I mean, it's the best card as far as intentions go and effects go, and it doesn't really have a downside. I know in nature too much sun can cause a drought, but in the tarot it doesn't really have a downside because it's about that higher consciousness, that divine energy, that source energy, that kind of thing. And we have, this person sitting here, in this nice little lotus position with their hands in their Anjali Mudra, looking up at, that's gratitude and prayer and offering of gratitude for what we already have. And that's even the things that are coming to us. So we're sort of offering gratitude in advance for that. And it's, I think she's hovering actually, because there's a little bit of a shadow underneath her there. But it's that elevated consciousness. Like when you think about, what's that phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
It's like human beings have done so much nonsense on the planet. Everything that we're facing that's like horrendous right now, we've caused ourselves. micro and macro again. And if we would just focus on the intention, that positive, grounded, all the way from the root chakra to the crown chakra intention, let the universe take over most of it and just show up every day, we'd be in a much better scenario because we don't actually know. We think we do. We like to think that we're supreme beings, but we are so not. We tapped into it, you know?
Right.
All these things that whatever they are, like things we think are phenomenal ideas, we've screwed up more things than not. So it's that sort of handing things over and trusting that, okay, I'm just going to do this. This is what I want in a general sense, and the universe is going to take over. Then you mentioned Pisces. We've got the Page of Cups again. So cups are water sign related, and pages are all about communication again, and things being muddied. Okay, back to Pisces. It's kind of that in the tarot. This card is not so much about the feelings being muddied, but a little bit immature. They're not at their ripened developmental point. So, um, I would say the way to navigate that is more about go with the playful as opposed to the confused. Like translate your anxiety into expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that. That again, that Mercury and Libra, I think that was that sun card was really beautiful, I think, for that Mercury and Libra, because look at how she just knows.
Yeah.
She just knows. There's that sense of balance from within.
Yeah.
So to come back to that. Okay. On October 14th, we have Venus in Libra, trine Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. So just a few days before, on October 11th, we have the Sun in Libra, trine Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. Now it's Venus in Libra. First of all, one thing you're going to notice this month is that whatever the Sun in Libra does, Venus in Libra is going to do, because Venus is like riding like really close to the Sun all month long. And I'm actually glad I'm bringing that up, because when that happens, especially when you have Venus in its home sign, this is actually a really good, it's a really good omen. Like, so even if things feel heavy, please remember that on top of eclipse season, Venus traveling with the Sun is supportive energy. Venus traveling with the Sun is the illumination. The Sun illuminates all of the beautiful qualities that Venus in Libra has. And it's, again, this ability to be able to eloquently and effortlessly state what you want. Even if it doesn't come out that way, understand that it's there. That's my point, that it's there. Venus and the Sun together is like almost like Christmas. Like it feels like you're like, if you're patient enough, you're going to open a gift. And so that happens most of the month. So pay attention to that. If you're focused, if your intention is to come back to yourself day in and day out, beautiful energy for that. So on October 14th, that's actually a Friday. That's actually a really nice date night. Venus in Libra trine Saturn in Aquarius. Venus coming together with Saturn can represent commitment. Don't jump the gun, let things unfold, but understand that that's actually a really solid aspect. It's air energy. It's in Libra and Aquarius. So let's say that this has nothing to do with romance. That's actually also a really great week for negotiations, signing contracts, finalizing things, collaborations, communication. If you're thinking about wanting to work with someone, reach out to them, because this Venus in Libra trine Saturn in Aquarius aspect does perfect itself on Friday, October 14th, but it's active that whole week. So take advantage of that.
You are going to just have your mind blown with the card that showed up. I'm telling you. It's the Ace of Swords,
Oh,
the Ace
wow.
of Voices. This is air sign. This is mind expanding. This is clarity of thought, clear communication, divine channeling, whatever. Okay. Where do those thoughts come from? We've got prayer ties. We have this multicolored, we have a circle, we have all of this like symbols of infinity. You're not going to, ruin your thoughts by letting more thoughts in. Like in this case,
Yeah.
it's not a question of overthinking, it's about gaining new information, and it's from out there somewhere. And wisdom, we have the owl there for wisdom, and just this like allowing it to come through when we see, where that information is coming. She's not seeking it, she's just intending it, and it's flowing straight into her mind in this like pinpoint, ah, like those aha moments. And yeah, like the sky is clear, the pyramid, these are things that that elevate us. When we people always say things like, well, the pyramids never existed in nature just as a natural thing. Sure they are. If you take anything like grains of sand or whatever and you just pour them down, they will naturally form like a pyramid type shape. So
Mm, wow.
that's where we are. Yeah, it's everything you said in a pretty picture.
It is so pretty. It is so pretty. Yeah, that's a really lovely week. Okay, so we jump forward to October 17th, which starts the following week. And that starts with the sun in Libra creating a trine to Mars in Gemini. So I think this is an important thing to mention because Mars is going to retrograde in Gemini at the end of the month. So if there are things that you have been thinking about starting, take advantage of every day before October 30th to do it. Whatever that means to get it started, take advantage of that. Because once Mars goes retrograde in Gemini, it's going to be really hard to get things off the floor. If you start it, at the very least, you know now that you started with good supporting energy, with enough momentum. Do expect delays as Mars retrogrades, from October 30th to January 12th. But at the very least, you're starting with good energy. At the very least, you've started the communications or whatever it is. Okay. So on October 17th, the sun in Libra creates a trine to Mars and Gemini. That's actually really good. The sun in Libra. How do we show up our identity, our vitality, our creativity in Libra as balanced as possible, as in touch with ourselves as possible, creating a favorable aspect to Mars action in Gemini. Let me take action on my ideas, on my creativity when I show up. Another great way to start the week. I'm making an emphasis on this month because, again, it's eclipse season. There are a lot of things that are out of our control. If we stay focused on what matters,
Mhm.
eclipse seasons don't hit as hard. Let life happen. Let them show you what they're going to show you. Let them align you. Let them put you on your path. But when you show up, it's like you kind of understand the assignment.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really nice way of putting it. Yeah. We've got the Queen of Inspiration here, and this is the Queen of Wands,
Love
and
it.
wands are fire. Mars is fire,
Mhm.
and it's a really interesting vibe because we have that balanced feeling, but we've got that fire, that passion, that it's innovation, but it's not from that cerebral place. It's
Mhm.
innovation and ideas that come from, like, I want to create something, I want to manifest something, I am waiting for the whatever. And this is like this divine feminine, like it's the most action feminine receptive energy can have. So
Yeah.
it's not passive to the point of like, oh, I'm just going to sit around and wait for something to fall into my lap. It's the, I am seeking inspiration.
Mhm.
kind of feeling.
Mhm.
And it's a beautiful image of like allowing the sun, the sun is like hitting her face. It's like activating that third eye. It's like, activating your pineal gland and
Yes.
sitting in it, basking in it, waiting, but it's actively waiting. She's sitting in the sun. She's not, hiding under her blankets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's this month requires movement and action
Yeah.
because with your movement and action, you're moving along with the universe's energy.
Yeah.
And that is what I like to call meeting the universe halfway. You do your part, the universe will do its part. And it's really magical in that way, really beautiful. I mean, magical to the human mind, but to a different understanding, it's like, well, yeah, that's how it works. Okay, October 18th, we have Venus and Libra create a trine to Mars and Gemini. Exactly what the sun did a day before, Venus is doing a day after. Look, that week of the 17th, Venus in her home sign in Libra, creating beautiful energy right next to the sun, creating a trine to that Mars in Gemini. She's connecting with her lover, right? Venus is connecting with the other cosmic lover in a favorable trine. So this is, again, Venus and Libra, creativity, negotiation. Venus and Libra is good for money negotiation. Mars and Gemini, here's the information. That week is so good for like money talks, ideas, signing contracts. Really great week for that. But you have to be confident. You have to know you. You have to know what feels right to you. Um, yeah, I don't have much more to say. It's a beautiful energy.
Yeah. So, carrying over from
Beautiful.
the Queen of Inspiration, the Queen of Wands, we have the Page of Wands. So this is the third page that we have so far. And it's, again, all about communication. All that stuck energy that was there, it's all flowing. The pages are still, they're younger energy. So they're not stagnant. They're ready to be, you know, open to something new. They're a little bit naive sometimes, or a little bit impulsive, or a little bit immature, or juvenile, whatever. It's that kind of energy. But again, it's the going out there to find it, to seek it. And pages are all about communication, whether it's, self expression or emotions or documents or whatever. And inspiration or the wands, this is creativity. This is that
Yeah.
thing, and it can feel impulsive. So that warning to, take a few steps, maybe that inspiration, that striking a match, okay, get off your butt, go out, and then see what happens. Like, you don't have to like completely dive in, but it's just to sort of change that stagnation by get that inspiration to like do something. It doesn't have to be like, a 12-year commitment to a project or something. It's just like,
Right.
hey, I'm going to go into this bookstore.
Right.
Whatever it is, just it's that little spark of the thing that's going to draw you in. You sort of let the universe then tell you where to go after that. Yeah, there she,
I
yeah.
That's a beautiful card. That's a beautiful card. I really love that these pages are coming up, and I love that, you thank you for explaining what that means, because I think one thing we want to keep in mind is that you have to allow yourself to be new.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because remember, this Mercury retrograde, it feels a little bit like like we're coming out for air.
Yeah,
It's like, this kind of like a rebirth type of energy.
definitely.
So the way that we're approaching life and relationships now is different. It's new. It feels new. If it feels new, if it feels a little uncomfortable, if it feels like I've never done this before, you haven't. You haven't. If it feels like how I mentioned earlier, like these fears, these thoughts of fear and worry and anxiety were coming up. And then I thought, I don't have the same tie to that. Oh,
Mhm.
that's different. Okay, let me see how this works out instead. Let it marinate. Let this newness marinate. Let it come in. Play with it. Because there is a part of us that's very new.
Mhm.
Okay. So October 19th, we have the Sun in Libra square Pluto in Capricorn. So Pluto's now direct in Capricorn. It's similar to what you said earlier, Susheela, about things that are happening around us. We're not oblivious to them anymore. We clearly know what's happening. For instance, around the world, we clearly know what these governments, regimes, we know what they've been doing. No more hiding it. Sun square Pluto is Sun in Libra, the individual, Pluto and Capricorn, a greater institution, if you will. A 90-degree angle. It's a rough aspect. It's a rough aspect. I think we're going to see more of it collectively. And this is like the reluctance and the resistance to change, and people saying, no, Libra is the sign of justice and what's fair. And that being what's fair. We want justice. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, because Pluto also represents the psychological power that a greater power might have.
Mhm.
Pluto in Capricorn, greater power, Sun, the individual over a people. This to me, even as I'm explaining it, feels much more like a collective energy, more so than an individual energy. That's
Mm.
what's naturally coming through.
Yeah, and I think it, that collective energy will get translated individually, of
Right.
course.
Right.
But, you know, the card that I have is the Five of Pentacles, or
Yeah.
Five of Materials in this. And this is that feeling of, it's not so much restriction as limitation. Like, I'm not enough. I don't have enough. Somebody's taking something from me. They have more than me. There's like a feeling of lack, or now I have to do with less, and so we look at collectively, there's the things like, whatever it is, the interest rates and inflation and all these ramifications, like, well, I thought I had this much, but I only have this much, or I felt like I was worth this, but I only have this. And
Mhm.
it's sort of sitting in that space of like making that mental transition of like, who cares? Like, do I really need it? Like,
Mhm.
it's not a fighting back of like some of the energies we've seen of like getting up in arms and saying, well, I'm going to protest and I'm going to whatever. This is like a very um, subdued kind of feeling with a huge impact. You know,
Mm.
it's like when you think of frugality,
Mhm.
some people do that. I mean, without being stingy, you
Mhm.
know, if you're used to living a certain lifestyle where you're eating out all the time and you think of how much expense that is it actually healthy for you? How much money is being spent on it? Whatever things that you tell yourself as to why you do that, then you bring it down to, well, if I actually cooked every day and I did this every day. So you're being frugal. So you've cut your expenses down to maybe 1/3 of what they were because of some external oppressive force, let's say. And then at the end, you're actually like, well, this is actually better for me. And it's not, it will negatively impact the oppressive force
Mhm.
on you without you actually doing something that's fighting back. You're actually flipping it around and doing something really positive and proactive.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I like that. Well, the next day on October 20th, again, Venus following the sun's footsteps. Venus in Libra creates a square to Pluto in Capricorn. So this can be, because it involves all the relationship energy, Venus and Libra, creating a square to Pluto in Capricorn. This is really about checking like the power dynamics in relationships. This is about like uncovering the dark stuff, the shadow part of the relationship. And because this is a square, it's catalyzed by something. So it's either catalyzed by a situation, a conversation, and there's, at the very least, it brings forth a lot more clarity. If you're looking for clarity in a relationship and you want to know where you each stand, this is probably going to be the week where that happens. Venus square Pluto, not a soft aspect. It's probably not going to come in the softest of ways, but be grateful for whatever comes up, because it definitely catalyzes change. Whether it's we go our separate ways, or, oh shit, we have more work to do than we thought. How do we go about that? There's a certain level of honesty here that it's one of those, like those hard pill to swallow type of honesty.
So we have the card, in every other deck, it's the King of Swords, but in this deck, they're called Muses, and they're usually a horizontal card where there's this duality, this reflection back and forth, and it's an air sign, and it's about mental clarity and communication again. There's so much about communication this month and balance, and there it is. They're moving, they have their backs to each other. They're moving with ease, though. There's these big sort of maybe long-winded movements or explanations or whatever. Everybody has to get everything off of their chest, but it's clear. You know,
Right.
you can write something. I have a very old book called Psychosophy that was written in 1884, and it's very old language, and when you can't read more than a page at a time because you just kind of go like, whoa. But the same thing will be repeated sentence after sentence after sentence. It is this is the theory, this is not the theory, a bit more like this. And when you feel, and it goes like that, and it's kind of this feeling of clarity and confirmation, and it may feel a little Four of Swordsy, where you need to do this self-care. So all of this, go easy on yourself, go easy on the other person, take a little bit of a break, like do all of this verbalizing and thinking and articulating and intellectualizing and seeking. But what about that thing that you said about the thing? And okay, end the day like this.
Right. Right.
End the day like this. Everybody go to the spa, whatever, bubble bath, whatever it is. Yeah. Foot rubs, I don't know, whatever. Self-care at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, I love that. I love that card, because that really leads us into the October 22nd aspect, which is a Sun Venus conjunction in Libra. So remember, the Sun and Venus have been traveling thus far really close. So they have been in an orb of conjunction the entire month thus far. That's a really great thing. It just so happens that on October 22nd, they are perfecting that conjunction at 29 degrees Libra. So the 29th degree of any sign is known as the aneretic degree. The 29th degree is an important degree. It represents like the accumulation of all of that energy, depending on the sign and the planet that it's in. And if two planets are conjunct, then it's almost like an explosion of that. Like anything else, we get to decide what the explosion of that energy is. So energy is neutral until we decide what to do with it. A Sun-Venus conjunction, again, is lovely energy. It's harmonious. It's it's balanced. It's good news type of thing. It's like, oh, like seeing a friend and hugging them and saying, I love you so much. It's just a warm feeling, really beautiful energy. And in Libra, this is really beautiful again for relationships. This is also really beautiful. Sun Venus, again, great R&R day. It's a Saturday. Um, that same day, we have Mercury in Libra create a trine to Saturn in Aquarius. So the sun created a trine to Aquarius, Venus created a trine to Aquarius, and now Mercury has finally caught up. Mercury and Libra trine Saturn in Aquarius. This is a commitment. To me, this is a lovely day for a wedding. Like, this is that type of energy. There's Saturn is involved. It's direct, it's commitment, Libra, energy, Venus, Sun, relationships. Now, I know not everyone's getting married that day, but also great day for dates, first dates. If you're in a relationship, great day. If you're thinking of buying a house and you're going out and looking at houses, if you want to rent something, this is a great day to anything that requires some kind of big purchase because Venus is involved. Really great day for that. The sun is involved, Saturn, Mercury, commitment, communication. Look, this is a freaking great day.
It is actually. So the first part, we've got the Three of Cups, or the Three of Emotions in this. It's usually social celebrations, all those things, engagements, just hanging out with friends, very happy, lighthearted. If it's, if you're just by yourself, it's still this feeling of celebration for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's yeah, there's just a warm, heartfelt, heart is full kind of energy. And then we've got, well, actually, I'm going to just show you the color link between these three that we've got for this day. So we've got that blue, that lovely blue that goes all the way through. And it's, sort of fluttering around. Here we've got the gold and the blue, which is the subconscious and the superconscious. So the
Okay.
divine is meeting the ground here, basically. So our inner and our super consciousness happening. Then we've got the world. So it is that day of opportunity, whatever it is. Like, get out of your routine and go find, go seek, go look. Oh, go to a different restaurant, go look in a different area for an apartment, try a different, whatever it is that you're doing. There's huge opportunity. And again, it's balanced. And we've got this like angelic energy of support from the universe. You have things going full circle. It's like all you need to do is step out again, and the universe will give you huge amounts of opportunity. It's not like a little opportunity. This is the world. This is the universe. This is like as big as you can get, basically. And then we've also got the Nine of Wands, or inspiration in this case, which is in some decks it's called the Wounded Warrior, or there's like these boundaries and barriers and things like that. But in this case, it feels so much more free flowing, and it's fire energy, and there's this warmth to it of that knowing of like where I stand, where do others stand, what are my limits, and it's not oppressive in any way. It's like this is very healthy, earthy, grounded, and still there's that, you know, inspiring intellectual whatever capacity. So it feels like a very balanced energy that's very optimistic, lighthearted, and still profound somehow.
Hmm. I love that. Those are beautiful cards.
Mm.
Beautiful cards for that day. Um, what's interesting is that I'm going to be hosting a retreat, a weekend retreat by the ocean that weekend. And I had forgotten why I suggested that weekend for
Yeah,
us to have that retreat. So yeah,
there you go. Yeah,
now
it
I remember.
should be absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. The next day on October 23rd, we enter Scorpio season. So the sun enters Scorpio, Venus enters Scorpio, and Saturn finally goes direct. Okay. This is an interesting shift of energy. It's still good. It's still a beautiful, powerful weekend, especially because it's leading up to the new moon eclipse in Scorpio that's happening a few days later. Okay. So Sunday, Sunday, October 23rd, the sun enters Scorpio. This is when we begin to go in the underworld a little bit. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean that in a bad way at all.
Yeah.
I mean, we begin to pay attention to different things. We begin to hold our shadow in a different light. I feel that this Scorpio season is going to feel different because of what the last couple of months have done to us, where we're holding our shadow almost with this sense of like, yeah, this is also part of what makes me. And if I hold it differently, it's going to empower me more because I get to discover what's underneath. Venus and Scorpio, we go from that balanced energy. We go from this is how we work together. Ideally, this is how we work well together. This is how we mesh well together. Now, how do we do in intimacy? It's like going from like a honeymoon phase to like the real intimate stuff. It's like, how do we manage money together? Right? How do we hold each other's shadow? Um, and Saturn going direct in Aquarius. So Saturn went retrograde June 4th, right after that last uh, eclipse season. There's a new understanding. There's a new sense of responsibility. So this is why I say that I feel we're going to hold our shadow differently. And I feel because at the end of the day, Scorpio is a sign that shows us our shadow without a shadow of a doubt. In order for us to be empowered by that. And I think that Saturn going direct on that day helps because we're much more grounded. And hopefully, to me, this can bring more compassion and understanding as well.
Mm-hmm. It's it's kind of interesting. I actually only pulled two cards for that for whatever reason. Um, the I never even paid attention to this little camel in the background, but it's this feeling of, having enough to sustain you over a period of time. And there's again the potential for a restrictive nature with this card. It's like the four of discs or the four of pentacles. She's looking a bit uncomfortable here. And on one hand, the four of pentacles can be having more than enough money. It can be even more than the 10 of pentacles. It can be like tapping into unlimited resources. So you're always met with everything. I would say the more common side of this is how we hold on to things, like a miserly energy. We're
Mm.
entering into this like boom energy. And what do? We hold on tight. Like when you get onto a roller coaster, even though they've tied you into everything, you're like white knuckling it. It's that kind of feeling. And it's not necessary. It's saying like it's this October 23rd, it's not necessary to hold on. You're strapped in. It's fine. Like, and we also have then the five. It's like it's this very kind of
Uh-huh.
conflicting. I feel like I'm playing with action figures. This again, kind of like, did I miss the boat? Did I get left out? Did I really do all the stuff? Like, did I do all the work? Like, there's that. It's not even about second guessing, but it's more like that feeling of like you say, we're going into the shadow part? How do I hold that and not get sort of swallowed by the darkness? Like,
Mhm.
just kind of go like, yeah, there's a shadow. I have a
Mhm.
shadow.
Right.
You know,
Right.
in this case, she's got icicles everywhere. And rather than look at them as, oh, aren't those beautiful? Look at how water crystallizes. You're going like, oh, aren't these horrible, sharp, pointy things, you know? And it's like that feeling of being potentially left out of something. Did I actually hop on? Did I hop on the right train? You know, like being late for the train and running and
Right.
running and running on the platform and hopping on and then being relieved and then suddenly going, is this the right train?
Right.
That's the feeling that I get of like things can kind of go either way, and it comes down to our perception, really, our attitude, our perception of what those energies are. There's like a whole bunch of stuff happening that day. So
Absolutely. You know what this reminds me of as I hear you speaking? Um, when working with people and even with us, right? We do our work for a certain amount of time and we kind of isolate. For those that are dating, they don't date for a while. They kind of just want to like clear a lot of energy and get their head straight. And then it's like they're at a point. It's like, okay, I'm going to start dating again. And that fear kicks in of, but can I trust myself not to go back to those patterns? Can I don't know that I trust myself. I'm afraid I'm going to fall into those patterns again. I think this energy and just what you said is it's not so much about denying that these things exist inside of you. It's about the more you deny them, the more they're going to come up. But the more you acknowledge them for how much they've actually taught you, the
yeah,
more um, control that you'll feel that you have over them. And I think that that's that. It's about, yeah, this is, for instance, yeah, I'm I can be codependent. Okay, knowing that about myself, I know what the traits look like. Okay, I now know when I'm moving in that direction and I can take a step back. Remember, it's not, Scorpio is about, I heard this described a very long time ago. I was a baby astrologer. Scorpio and Pluto are energies that strip us of any self deceit,
mm-hmm,
right? So it's not that these things are going to just evaporate, it's that they exist for a reason. And when we hold them differently, not only are we no longer lying to ourselves about them, we can actually become empowered by them. So, yeah, I think that's it's an interesting weekend.
yeah,
It's an interesting weekend. October 25th, we have the first eclipse of the season. Okay, we have a new moon eclipse in Scorpio at 2 degrees Scorpio. So here's something important. This is a new moon eclipse. Every eclipse has the power of 3 lunar events. So if it's a new moon eclipse, which is a solar eclipse, it has the power of 3 new moons in one. If it's a lunar eclipse / full moon eclipse, it's the power of 3 full moons in one. This is a new moon eclipse. But because the south node is in Scorpio, it really represents that in order for there to be a new beginning, new moon, there needs to be a clear ending. Because the south node, any transiting south node, especially in the sign of Scorpio, which represents a purging and a letting go, this is a clear indication of that. The south node always represents a letting go, and a new moon represents a new beginning. So be mindful of that all month, because anything that ends, anything that, and look, this doesn't have to be catastrophic, right? This can be like, this can be a transition at work. Oh, this just happens to be a time in which my clients' contracts are over. And it may feel like my clients are leaving me, their contracts are over. Or it can be, all right, great, those contracts are over. I was of service. Who else is coming in?
yeah.
So please be mindful of that. Powerful new moon eclipse.
You're gonna love this one.
I want to see.
Look at all those moons. Like
Yes.
It's one of the few decks that actually has the Wheel of Fortune with moons in it. So it's this
Okay.
moon cycle and all this playful energy of all the different parts of that cycle. So we're functioning through cycles. Some are good, some are bad. We have our own patterns. Some of our patterns are really good. They're meant to make our lives more efficient. We have different rituals. We go through, the moon goes through phases. We go through seasons. It's all of that stuff. And it's just like sort of embracing, if you work with the cycle, things go much better. If you're going to try and resist it, good luck trying to prevent a solar eclipse. Like,
Exactly.
just you have to go with it. Like, do whatever is conducive on that day moving forward.
Mhm.
That's all I have to add.
That's it. It's that simple. What a lovely card for that. That's beautiful. I love that.
Resistance is futile. So
Yes. Yes. Okay, October 26th, we have what do we have? October 26th, Mercury and Libra, trine, Mars and Gemini. The sun did that before, Venus did this before, now Mercury does it. So please understand that when multiple planets do the same things in the same signs, we're being given a message. Okay. Just knowing that this is constant contact between Libra and Gemini, a lot of communication. I'm telling you, this is a great month for negotiations, contract signing, working with people. Just don't forget that. Focus on focus on the good stuff. I mean, why not? You know? So Mercury and Libra, the mediator. Mercury and Libra, the attorney. Mercury and Libra, your side, meeting halfway. This is your part of the collaboration, my part of the collaboration. Trine, Mars, and Gemini. How do we put these ideas into action? Again, that same theme. And we did it with the sun, with Venus, and now Mercury. Those three planets are the planets of contract. I see a lot of agreements happening this month.
yeah.
And that's exciting.
Yeah, I think so many things were stagnating. Things were beyond our control for so many months, whether it was, our personal healing, our personal growth, projects that we wanted to do, jobs, new places to live. All of those things were hindered by the collective energy for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And now everything's flowing. We're not used to it. It's kind of like I always feel this way at this time of the year, like transitioning from, flip-flops and sandals to like closed-toe shoes. It's like, how these don't fit me the same anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm so used to being out there, and it's like
Right.
that with our consciousness. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, we need to now fit into some kind of configuration, but this isn't hindering, it's taking us somewhere. It's there. Yeah, I'm not going jogging in flip-flops. I need to put on some good, solid, supportive, closed-in shoes. And the card that we have is the Ace of Inspiration, or the Ace of Wands. And it's this solution oriented, finding the right answer, coming up with an innovative approach that was not there before. It's not flighty. This, she's looking very confident, just short of arrogant. You know what I mean? It's like, aha, like I've gotten it, but it's not kind of out of nowhere. It's available at this
Mm-hmm.
point. That's what it is. It was not available before, whether it was because your frequency didn't match up with the solution or the timing wasn't right. And think about, we're coming out of that Wheel of Fortune too, which is like divine timing, things being
Right.
fortunate. So this is when that happens. It's the beginning cycle. So we're not at the bottom of the wheel, we're at the top of the wheel where stuff is happening. We're back on top.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And again, following that pattern of what Libra energy has been doing all month long, on October 27th, the next day, Mercury in Libra creates a square to Pluto in Capricorn. Again, the sun in Libra did that, Venus in Libra did that. So to me, this is, if we're talking about negotiations and contracts and agreements and all of that, this is just about, look, be straightforward, say what needs to be said, right? This doesn't have to be like an argument. This is just about clarity. This is an aspect of not wasting your time, your resources, or someone else's. This is about, because Pluto is now direct in Capricorn, this is about carrying yourself in a different way. Like having, like, I'll give you an example. My partner, he's had issues with jobs this year. Like, they're reliable, they're inconsistent, and he's been having a hard time, right? What that has shown him is, well, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I aligned with. Now he's finally at a point, he's like, I can't do that. So he finally found a company that he feels much more aligned with. He's like, they look more serious. But what was it waiting? For him to get a little more serious within himself. So that's what this is. This is about, again, tapping into how have you grown up? What do you know you need to do? And that's what you're going to align with. So Mercury square Pluto, no BS. No BS.
We have an amazing card for this. It's the Knight of Pentacles, Knight of Materials. This is the only deck I know of where the horse is running, because usually it's the slowest moving knight in all of the decks. It's grounded. So we have growth and loyalty and honesty and steadfastness and, all of that. Knights are champions of their suit. So practical terms, tangible results, something on paper, something in the bank, dotted line, you've got, the signatures there, like the stamp of approval, whatever it is really solid. And, when you're giving that example, I'm thinking of, there's no place for nuances. Like, I think of my son has Asperger's, and it's almost like, imagine everybody you're encountering has that, where they're not going to pick up the nuances, and they're not going to be offended by you being direct.
Yeah.
They appreciate it because the nuances make things really confusing. So it's just like, I need A, B, and C, and you're going to give me 1, 2, 3. Are we in agreement? No, I actually need, elemental P as well.
Right.
Okay, well, for that, we'll need 9, 10, 11.
Exactly.
That works for me. That works for me. Wonderful. It's going to take this amount of time. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
No fluff. No, you don't need to dress it up. You don't, nothing.
That's, we need that. We need that. Again, saves time, resources from everyone involved. So the next day we have Jupiter retrograde. It has been retrograde for some time. It has been retrograde in Aries. Now it's going retrograde to Pisces. So we haven't had a Jupiter in Pisces since May. And Jupiter is going to retrograde into Pisces, and then it's going to move direct in Pisces. And all of this is happening within the 28th and 29th degrees of Pisces. I have several things to say about that, okay? So first of all, the last time that Jupiter was in Pisces was in May, the last eclipse season, especially when it was at the 28th and 29th degree of Pisces. Jupiter rules Pisces. So we had Jupiter in Pisces from January to May of this year. I don't know how you experienced that, but I happened to have a lovely time. I got the way it fell in my chart. I got work. I got to travel. I got to meet people. It was beautiful. Jupiter in Pisces, and in its highest manifestation is creativity, synchronicity, that which feels like serendipity, but isn't really because you've earned it. And now, the universe meets you halfway because you've met the universe halfway by showing up. Next thing, the 28th and the 29th degree. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. 28 and 29 degrees, the last two degrees of any sign. This to me represents an ending, like a significant ending, either of something that you've been working on, of something that comes back and you have to finish it. But because Jupiter and Pisces is water energy, it's the last sign of the zodiac, it represents this ultimate expression of divine wisdom. If we look at the zodiac from a holistic perspective, to me, this is like that final try of the universe to get us into this knowing of, please recognize how divine and magical you really are. Please understand that, yes, you do the human stuff. And then when you come back to your rituals, to your meditation, to your prayer, to your connection, when you pay little mind to those subpar thoughts of fear and anxiety, and you actually just show up, trust that. To me, this Jupiter in Pisces at those last 2 degrees, this last bit of the year, I feel that it can be much more powerful than 5 full months of it. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it.
So you said the word final and completion like a dozen times, and that is really what it is, because we have, so remember too, we always talk about the numerology in all of this. We've had 3 pages, which are like 11. Okay, so we've had 3 out of the 4 of them. We've had multiple 8s, we've had multiple 5s, multiple aces, which you're still coming here, and 10s. So the Wheel of Fortune is a 10, and the 10 of Wands, and now the 10 of Materials, or the 10 of Pentacles. So, we think of Pisces as this watery, whatever. Okay. But the way this energy is right now, it is so grounded, and that watery element is like about really tapping into that woo-woo space of that higher consciousness, where that 5D part of you that can tap into there and bring it down here. And so this is that feeling of, this is completion for the next whatever generation, your legacy, what you leave to the earth, what you perpetuate in your family, the family that came before you, what you're leaving behind. It's, if you're thinking about what you're creating or what you're healing, it has this ripple effect. That aspect astrologically depicted like this, you can see there's a whole group of people there, and they're encircling this big tree because they've co-created it, and it's flourishing, and it will go on past their physical existence on the planet. And that's hard for a lot of people to imagine. Like, I can't create anything that big, or I don't want to be what they put it in terms of something very materialistic or very capitalistic. Like, I don't want to be a billionaire, or I don't want to whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the legacy of what it is that you're doing is available to you right now. Yeah. It's not a small thing.
It's not. And I have nothing more to add to that, because it's exactly it. It's exactly it. That takes us to October 29th, Mercury and Scorpio. So Mercury and Scorpio, we dig a little deeper, we think a little harder. Mercury and Scorpio, I like to call Mercury and Scorpio the detective of the zodiac, the depth psychologist of the zodiac. So this is kind of giving us a little bit of a break of all of the socializing that has the potential to go on in October. And Mercury, and think about it, if October presents us with the opportunity to make connections, significant ones, and actually solidify them, we have to get to work. So, and this is interesting because towards the end of the year is the time when people tend to just kind of like, well, let me, like coast the rest of the year. I mean, you can, but it's really good energy. Like, it's really great energy to take advantage of. And I think that Mercury and Scorpio can really help to like get you focused, kind of like eye on the prize, be mindful, right? Not because Mercury and Scorpio can also be obsessive.
Yeah.
And I can see that if you're really excited about something, you can become absolutely enthralled and obsessed with it. Be mindful of how you're using the energy. But Mercury and Scorpio is really great energy for focus, especially if you use the month of October to connect in the way that you did. And look, even let's say that you didn't sign any contracts, you didn't make any agreements, you're not working with anybody. It's still, you're still being activated by that energy. With this Mars in Scorpio, how do you integrate it? Mercury and Scorpio, great energy for integration, especially psychological integration.
So, okay, in this deck, this is a very unique depiction here. We've got all these dominoes lined up, and she's giving it a kick so that they all sort of fall in succession. And it's typically a card of planning. So when you say, you could just coast, or, well, you could plan, you could continue to plan for the next phase or the next two phases, so that if you want to coast maybe after you've sort of set things up. Okay, so it's the Two of Wands and the Three of Wands. I always sort of envision in this way. The Two of Wands is where you want to create something, but you don't know what that is yet. So you're thinking, okay, I'm going to paint a picture of what it is, but I don't have any paints. I don't know how to paint, and I don't have any canvases, but I would like to do that. So that's the Two of Wands energy. As we get into the Three of Wands energy, the Three of Inspiration, you've set the easel up, you've got the canvas there, you've got the paints, and now you're trying to configure what that vision is going to look like. And so one thing that we need to always keep doing is like, you can coast a lot easier when you have a plan to put in place. It's like if you're self-employed, you kind of always want to have a new flow of clients as some come in and some go out, instead of waiting for everything to dry up and then going, oh my gosh, I have to start looking for new work. It's kind of that feeling of like, this isn't desperation, this isn't being compulsive or impulsive or obsessive. It's just like, let me keep that energy flowing. Let me see what those next, whatever, how many weeks till the end of the year, is it going to benefit me? Yes, it's going to benefit you. It's going to be killer domino effect if you set up everything. You don't have to kick it yet, but set them up, ready to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that card may have picked up also on the next day, which is October 30th. And that's finally when Mars goes retrograde in Gemini till January 12th of 2023, guys. Okay. So Mars, the planet of action, the planet of moving things forward, the planet of trying to sprint, right? In Gemini, information, communication. This might feel a little bit like a prolonged Mercury retrograde because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. The energy is going to be slowed down. Mars retrograde. The last time we had a Mars retrograde, and this was, Mars was in Aries, so it was in its home sign. It's going to feel different. The last time we had a Mars retrograde was from July 2020 to January 2021. So it wasn't retrograde the whole time, but that's when Mars was in Aries. So Mars was in Aries for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It retrograded from about probably October to January. That was the last time. So I invite you to think back at that time if it helps to create some kind of reference, right? Think about what was going on, what you thought was going to move forward and didn't. This is similar. I don't think it's going to feel as forceful as a Mars and Aries, but it's still going to be somewhat annoying. And I use the word annoying because Gemini is involved. Again, it's information, it's emails, it's conversations, it's so this is why it's so important that you do take advantage of October. And like Susheela said about that Mercury and Scorpio, have a plan in place of some sort, however that lands on you, so that when Mars is retrograde in Gemini, look, this doesn't mean that life is going to stop. This doesn't mean that things aren't going to be done. It's just that while Mars wants to run, it's going to like try and run and then be like, wait, what? Like, oh, I have to redo. Okay. And then it's going to try and run again. And then it's going to have to take a step back. First of all, try not to sprint. Take your time and understand that if there's a delay, especially with a retrograde planet, it's a blessing. It really is. If you don't have something to move forward with yet, it's just trust the timing. Trust the timing. But just understand that this is what's ahead. So, and I say this because, you know, that's the holiday season.
Yeah.
It's the holiday season. So shopping might be annoying. If you're ordering stuff, it might take longer. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen at a macro level with, you know, like truck drivers who have been on protest, right? That's the sign of Mars and Gemini. They deliver things. They are delivering things and they're set in motion. If they protest, what's that going to look like in terms of, are we going to get the stuff that we order online? What's Christmas going to look like? So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and that, you know, there's that plan for these strange eventualities, you know. Yeah, I actually have two cards for this. And it's interesting because this is the Ace of Pentacles, the Ace of Materials in this. And it's a very positive card in that it holds so much potential for something tangible, but it's also the first step in something. So it's a number one. And then we have the Magician, which is also a one in the major arcana. This is the card of, again, initiating manifestation.
Beautiful.
And this is a very solid, this is a very almost mystical kind of combination.
Okay.
And then we have that previous day of planning stuff. But it's almost like planning stuff like I'm preparing for something, but I'm not quite sure what. And when I see the Magician with the Ace of Pentacles, I think of an old joke by comedian Stephen Wright. And he said, you know, he had this light, so he's this very deadpan voice that kind of, you know, and he said really bizarre things. And it reminds me of this joke where he says, I had this light switch in my room and I just kept turning it off and on for months at a time and nothing ever seemed to happen. Finally, after so many months, I got this call from this woman in Sweden and she said, cut it out. You know, it's like you're doing something, but the result isn't in your hands at the moment. So you're like, I'm waving this magic wand. Is it working? Am I conjuring the thing? Like, am I doing it? Meanwhile, there's this like slow, steady energy of like persistence and perseverance, and it's stable and it's good and it's got a great foundation and whatever. And you're still going like, but is it showing up? Is it here? Is it there? Is it whatever? And then all of a sudden, when everything will eventually move forward, there it is. But in that time, it's going to feel like, is this thing on?
Right.
Is it working? Like, am I doing it right? Does anybody hear me? So it's going to be a little bit of a shift. We're ending the month on a really having to trust. And we should be able to, because the entire month we're seeing proof
Yeah.
that it's been working.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that by the end of the month, we actually know, we have a deep sense of knowing that, like, even though I can't see what the universe is doing behind the scenes, I absolutely trust that the universe is doing whatever it thinks is best for me. So I'm just going to keep doing this.
Yeah. And please remember that, because look, again, it's eclipse season. This is all happening under the umbrella of significant eclipse energy. Um, the following month in November, we're going to have the full moon eclipse in Taurus during Scorpio season. So we're under heavy energy, but October really gives us the opportunity to ground ourselves.
Yeah.
And we can. One thing I want to add to that Mars retrograde energy is, because again, I think October will bring opportunities, and it will bring opportunities for us. I think it might bring us a lot of opportunities that we want to say yes to.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful with that, because once Mars goes retrograde in Gemini, this can feel like an overwhelm of things that you're what I can see happening is saying yes to a lot of things. And then once Mars goes retrograde in Gemini, and it's like November, December, you're like, I cannot believe I said yes to all of this. So be mindful of that.
Yeah.
But back to what you were saying, it's eclipse energy. Trust that it's all happening exactly as it needs to, especially during eclipses. I invite you to go back. How were April and May for you? If they were heavy at the time, if you had to let go of some heavy things, if you had some pretty significant transitions, don't think that it's going to feel the same way this time, but understand how powerful that time was, and that this season, because it's no different like any other eclipse season, has the potential to be just as powerful, and perhaps in a different way, in a way that actually elevates you. But you have to get out of the way, and you have to show up and do what you need to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a jam-packed month.
So
This is
much.
when we say, oh, I want such and such. And then the universe goes, okay, here it is, all of it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah. Take your vitamins, stay hydrated, get your good shoes with traction. Get ready. Yeah.
yeah. Good month. Good month ahead. Uh, thank you, Susheela, as always.
Thank
And
you.
thank you everyone else for tuning in. We really hope that you stay till the end and that you enjoy it, because we love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, we do. All right. Thanks.